Hi, my name's Scott Miller. Welcome to my Top Performance blog. I'm here this morning calling from Chicago to, where are you in Norway anyway, Jorgen?
Right now I'm in Oslo, so in the capital of Norway.
And you were just telling me that it's very hot in Oslo.
It is. I think it's like 27, 28 degrees outside Celsius it is.
Hmm.
So
And
really hot.
this is unusual.
It is really unusual.
I know that I've been there during the winter, and I have to say it's not only beautiful, it's very cold much of the time.
True. That's true.
Well, and I think your research topic, Jorgen, is going to be heating things up as well. You've just finished your dissertation on negative outcomes in psychotherapy. And you sent me an email with the primary findings because we'd corresponded a bit. And can you give us the headlines? What do we know about negative outcomes in psychotherapy?
Well, so that is a big question, but I think we don't know that much. So that is really the big headline. I think we have a few studies, few empirical studies.
Okay, and so
Wow.
we just don't, as a field, we've just not looked at it. It's been theory driven. Why don't we have any research into negative outcomes?
So that is a big question as well, but we can speculate, and
Okay.
I think that we might have been a bit afraid of looking into it.
Hmm.
I think we might have been too concerned about proving that psychotherapy works, which it obviously does.
Yeah.
So yeah. So there's and some authors speculate that there's a publication bias, and this is kind of the one of the key findings in the literature, that there's people are not using the same terms, but differentiating between negative outcome, that is deterioration, patients getting worse, and people not getting better or no change.
Hmm. And are there some general figures, given the loose definition that you've come up with in your review of the literature?
Yeah, so I put it that between 5 and 15% of all patients undergoing psychotherapy have a negative outcome. So 10% maybe would be a conservative estimate, I think.
And then, as I understand it, from randomized clinical trials, the percentage of clients who achieve a reliable improvement in their functioning, greater than chance or noise or time, is around 50%.
Hmm.
So that means by simple subtraction, we're looking at about 35% who come but don't experience any measurable benefit.
Exactly. So I interviewed 10 Norwegian psychologists
Hmm.
on the topic, like qualitative interviews. Asked them, what do you know about negative outcome? How often do you think it happens? Have you gotten any education on the topic? Um, and especially the questions about how many of your own patients do you think have experienced, or do you know about that having experienced deterioration? So
Mm.
yeah.
And can you give us some idea about what your interviewees said on those subjects?
Sure. It's the same problem as in the literature. So there's no consensus on what constitutes a negative outcome.
And in terms of education, people had no conversations.
No. So there's a couple of courses that some of them have taken, which seem to barely touch the subjects,
Mhm.
but not really specific education on negative outcome. None reported to have that. Hmm.
What did your clinicians say about how many clients they worked with that had deteriorated?
Well, the average clinical experience uh, between my subjects were 16 years.
Yes.
So, And most of them had 2, 3, or maybe 4 examples of patients throughout their careers, and a couple of them actually didn't have any recognition of any patients getting worse throughout like 20 years of clinical practice.
How do you as a researcher and we as a field account for that?
Well, it's really surprising, isn't it? Because you would expect that they had some recognition of it, but not very plausible explanations is that they actually do not have any
Yes.
deterioration in the clinical practice. And if that were the case, we should definitely have a look at what they do to avoid that.
So you just somehow found the 10 psychologists in all of Norway who never had any clients deteriorate.
It is possible. I mean, it could be.
It is possible.
It is. But
alternate explanations?
That we are not really good at recognizing deterioration as clinicians.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to see, and I think it links back to the difficulties they were having on defining what constitutes negative outcome. So I mean, if you don't know what you're looking for, you're definitely not finding it.
Yeah. So what are you proposing, and what are you hearing from the experts about how we should address this issue? Both, let's say we arrive at some definition, and I don't know if you formulate one in your research, but what should we do? What should we do about it? How should we begin thinking about this?
I think and what is really interesting to me is that some of my subjects they report feelings of shame. Quite like bad feelings when thinking about both thinking about clients that actually deteriorated, and also thinking about their lack of ability to detect that there is some patients deteriorating. So there is some recognition there about, because they're intelligent people, obviously.
Of course.
Yeah. And they recognize that they should have found some patients when thinking about their clinical practice, but they don't find any. I think we need to really talk about this issue, and I think some might fear that this would harm our kind of respect or integrity amongst users or government or whatever. I think it might be the opposite.
Are you recommending or thinking then that maybe this should be a kind of part of our informed consent?
Mm-hmm.
That we would tell people that, like every intervention, anything that has the power to heal also can harm? Are you going that far?
It's a really exciting thought, because I mean, obviously there is some possible nocebo effects going on there. I mean, if you tell patients this might happen, that might happen, they tend to start looking for those, whatever you call it, side effects or negative effects, and somehow they might just find that.
Right.
I'm really curious about that question, and I think there's some interesting legal issues going on there as well. I mean, if we can establish that 10-15% of patients get worse, I mean, we're kind of obliged to tell all patients that is a risk undergoing therapy.
Right. Right. And in terms of detecting deterioration, what ideas are you having? What are you hearing from thought leaders in the field about what we should be doing?
I think feedback systems is the way to go. I mean, you need some kind of systematic feedback from the patients. And I mean, just relying on your clinical judgment seems to be, I mean, research shows us that is not enough.
Let's say you find out you've got a negative outcome, and since we've had no education really about it, are the people that you've interviewed telling us what they need when they've been able to identify a deteriorating case but aren't sure where they go?
Mm-hmm. we didn't really get that far in the interviews, to be honest. But what surprised me was that they really wanted to know more, really wanted more information. That really surprised me. They wanted to hear more about this and talk more with their colleagues about it. They recognized that there is something wrong here. I'm not getting this. I'm missing out on something. I need some more information. I need some more knowledge. They really did say that, and I think that is. So I started this project with a more like person-centered approach, kind of looking for the bad apples, I guess. But I came out with a more system-centered approach. I mean, there's something in the structure around the psychotherapists that need to be altered, I think, to really lift this topic.
Wow. I find that statement really profound, Jorgen. It's actually making the hair on my arm stand up. That I think there can be a temptation to look for the bad apple. Bad outcomes must be about that therapist, as opposed to we need to figure out what kind of community needs to support a better practice ethic, where talk about negative outcomes is not only tolerated but appreciated.
Exactly. So I mean, it comes back to how you view your mistakes, and this doesn't even need to be a mistake. I mean, that is also some of my findings, that therapists they have really easy for looking at negative outcome as a function of something that therapists have done.
Right.
So, I mean, that kind of makes it even more difficult to take a kind of a sober look at the phenomena to.
And this is where the shame obviously comes in.
Yeah.
Because why would you feel that if you didn't feel somehow responsible?
Yeah.
And yet in other areas of healthcare, people do worsen, and it's nothing that the treater did wrong.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, there's many sources for people to deteriorate, and making a mistake, whatever that would be, is just one of them.
Jorgen, I'm very grateful that you took some time out of your day to talk with me about your research. Is there anything I haven't asked about, or that you feel like you'd like to add or share before I say adios?
I think we've covered the basics, and it's really been really interesting talking to you about this, because I mean, as I say, and as you say as well, I think we need to raise this issue to unshame it, so to speak.
Perfect. Thanks, Jorgen.
Thank you.